Look what they've done to my boy.
Scott.
Yet again.
He looks quite good, I think.
Did we just watch the Halo trailer and we said he looks like a multiplayer skin? Unless you're doing a bit.
I'm doing a bit.
It's a video game podcast full of bits. Very good.
Scott, I did not expect to wake up to this news this morning that Halo had kind of transformed itself overnight. Tell me what's going on with this, because I kind of couldn't get it through my just woken up brain.
Well, so 343 Industries, long associated with, I was going to say the downfall of Halo, but whatever. Halo Infinite, I think, is the best playing Halo in a good long time.
Yeah.
But Halo itself has been on very rocky territory for a good long while, with 343 Industries as the shepherd of the franchise overall. They've relaunched themselves as a dedicated Halo studio, Halo Studios or something. They've got a new logo. They put a 6-minute dev diary thing out talking about the future of Halo and what they're going to be doing. And they have this whole sort of R&D project investigating the idea of Halo running on Unreal 5. They've put some things out that are in-engine, showing, I was going to say various levels. There are 2 or 3 in there. Most of it is inspired by the Silent Cartographer level from Halo 1, which also seems to be the general art direction of Halo. We had that with Halo Infinite. Halo Infinite's key art was just like, hey, remember Silent Cartographer? Remember when you loved Halo? Let's just sort of channel that again. And, like I said, going with Unreal 5, going with this sort of new idea of what Halo can be. However, and it's only been live for like 6 hours or something, but the general response online is that the look of Master Chief is a little bit off.
Yeah.
In some of the wider shots. Like they've kind of, and it's a weird thing to pin down. I know that there's some armor variation, but hardcore Halo people will know that like this is a specific version of the armor that isn't where it ended up at the end of Halo 5 or Infinite. But the wider shot of him just looks like a multiplayer skin. Just looks weird. And even the animation, and I'm picking it apart, but they're showcasing it.
That's it.
Like they show him igniting an energy sword, and it just that animation, it's quite rigid, just looks a bit weird. It all just looks a little bit weird, and I think even the studio logo looks a bit weird.
Yeah, it feels a bit weird.
Call me nitpickford, but at the same point, same degree, it's Halo. How hard is it to get this right? And maybe a soft reboot is what we need, but I don't know.
Well, nitpickford, I'll tell you what's going on with Halo. I think this is a strange one to throw out right now because, like you said, I am hesitant to criticize the look of Master Chief or kind of what they've shown off because it's very clearly early days. It's very much kind of just building the foundation of whatever the next era of Halo is going to be. And I imagine a lot of things are going to change in terms of the visuals and the aesthetic and the overall creative direction and whatnot. That said, you are absolutely right that they are showcasing it. They are using this as a proof of concept that things have changed, that they're going in this new direction. Look how good Halo can be going forward. And I don't think it's been successful on those terms. I just think Halo's in a very strange situation. I think 343 Industries, now the Halo studio, is in a strange situation. And I saw a lot of people this morning, pointing out the fact that they're now using this to recruit a new team for that studio months after laying off a bunch of people from that studio. And it just feels like 343, which I'll keep referring to them as for the sake of just consistency for this video, I guess, has just been through the ringer over the past few years. And I don't know what that team is, and I don't even know what Microsoft wants it to be. Obviously, the Halo team. But they've like you said, they've kind of been responsible for the franchise's downfall in many ways. And even though Infinite was a step up, at least in terms of the mechanical side of things, the gameplay side of things, the multiplayer side of things, that thing was so half-baked, even though it had an extra year to cook. So I don't have faith necessarily, and that brings me nothing. I don't enjoy that. I don't enjoy saying I don't have faith in a project. I want to believe, but you can only base your belief in something off the track record of that thing, and the track record of that thing for me over the past 10 years has not been good.
No, and it's also like Halo Infinite is a fascinating case to dissect. Like I think they saved it on a pure gameplay level over time. Like you said, it was a weird insight into the production line for Microsoft stuff. We got another look at it when Redfall came out in such a broken state, and then there was all the conversations on how could you let it get like this, and a lot of the conversations from various developers under working with Xbox, working with Microsoft, working alongside the assumed leadership team of Matt Booty, Phil Spencer, Sarah Bond, and how there's such a lack of communication there, and a lot of devs take to social media to kick up a stink to be like, can we just get an answer on the certain questions they have about the development pipeline? And like I said, we got a bit of a look into that with Halo Infinite, where it was delayed for a year. I think it was only 2 months before it was about to launch, and they still went forward with that Craig trailer and the stuff that was just a laughing stock. And it's like, how could you get this in front of people? And I think something like Halo Infinite, they're ditching the slipspace engine, which was the thing that was made entirely for Halo Infinite. That's part of why that game was such an absolute mess to bring together. And you just have to wonder about those internal conversations on like, okay, are we binning off Halo? No, we're keeping it. We're going to do Unreal 5 because there's a lot of buzz around Unreal 5. It seems like the conversation on Unreal 5 is like, that's when the current generation's actually going to kick in, because a lot of Unreal 5 stuff looks absolutely gorgeous. And so far, anything that's on Unreal 5 so far has looked really, really nice. And so it maybe makes sense to switch over to that. But like you said, it's still beset with conversations on layoffs and project focus and franchise focus. And also, I really want to point out that Joseph Staten left 343.
Right.
Original trilogy writer, Joseph Staten, like one of the most beloved individuals in the industry. They brought him back to save Halo Infinite during that delay when it was pushed back last minute. And there's only so much a dude like him can do, or anyone can do in a 1 year period. But he did manage to oversee Infinite getting back on its own feet kind of thing and playing extremely well and fixing the progression systems and the unlocks and everything. But as soon as that was done, he left again.
Yeah.
I imagine that was a living hell for him.
Yeah.
Because he's not around a lot of his original team anymore, if anyone anyway. And he's got to try and right the ship for this thing that he helped birth in the first place. And it must be such a weird disconnect from the energy of the original trilogy and when Bungie did it and then what 343 did. So where we're at now is assumedly the complete clean slate. And you can maybe soft reboot Halo or whatever. They've said multiple games are coming.
Yeah.
Over the last week or so, leaked information about the Halo Battle Royale game came out. There was another failed attempt at cashing in during the Halo Infinite period. And it's like, if we're starting all over again, what's the best case scenario? Like, Halo was a phenomenal point in time.
Yes.
And a lot of people I grew up through, I was there from day one. I loved it. All the way through to like ODST and Reach. And I don't even mind Halo 4. And I can even find some joy in Halo 5.
Yeah.
And I love dipping in on Halo Infinite. But it's like,
You're a trooper.
It's done, It's done.
Oh, God. I need to get into some negatives before I go into the positives because I'm not entirely sure it is done. I do think they can let it die. But, especially with the amount of scrutiny that's on Microsoft and Xbox right now, it is one of their biggest franchises, if not the biggest, even though it has waned over the past few years. If Gears can continue, then Halo absolutely, I think, deserves to alongside it. I'll get to the negatives, I suppose, before I move on. You mentioned there, is it a clean slate? That's what I'm not convinced of. It reminds me of, there's this bit in Mad Men, if I recall, where one of the companies the ad company that Don Draper works for, I promise this is relevant. Judge, I promise this is relevant. Who he works for, like they have a bad reputation and they're trying to change it around, right? So they're coming up with these elaborate schemes, essentially, to make their PR good. And because there's so much negativity associated with the name, and ultimately Don Draper kind of just goes, well, don't change the business, just change your name. That's the exact vibe I'm getting from this.
Yeah.
There's so much baggage around 343 Industries. Are they doing the work to transform that studio and make it a proper powerhouse? Or are they just changing the name and hoping that people believe in that idea, that it is a fresh slate? Because I'm struggling to find the sort of proof that it is. And again, based on what that studio or what Microsoft's overall direction of Halo has been so far, I just don't necessarily believe in it because you've had great creative directors come and go. It's not that no one good has worked for 343. They no doubt have had talented developers, but something's wrong with the production of Halo overall, and I think it's more than just the name of the studio. I think it's more than just the engine even. Something is broken in there, and I don't know how you fix it necessarily without, like you said, letting it die for a bit and then coming back a few years later, 5, 6, 10 years down the road. I don't know. No,
and I don't think they want the associated headlines of like Microsoft abandons Halo.
No.
Like, I think they think it's their Mario. Like when Halo Infinite was coming back around, the key art for that game was like a reset Master Chief. It wasn't the sort of over the top version from Halo 5 with like the boosters and the different bits of his armor. It was like a key art brand Bible 101 Master Chief. In a way that felt like we're getting back to basics. Like I said, most of the background stuff felt like it was based on Silent Cartographer, which is by far the most popular level from the first one. And so it's like, okay, if that's what Halo is now, then we need to like try and embrace that and try and expand and have fun with that and whatever. But I just think to me, it's almost everything wrong with the sort of branded, weird, elongated life approach that Hollywood has to brands overall. It's like, let's do a sequel to, was it Princess Diaries is getting a third?
Hell yeah, it is.
What do we do? It's always like a 20-year gap, and it's like, okay, what can we resurrect? Get the paddles out and pump this back to life for a bit. And Halo hasn't really gone away altogether. But how many people that were on that original team are present? Like, obviously, it's not even Bungie anymore. What can you possibly do? What stories can you tell? There's obviously a pocket of the audience that kept up with the wider lore, the books and everything that was then referenced in Halo 4 and 5. But like I said, it's like, what's the best case scenario? Is this more hubristic and pride-filled on Microsoft/Xbox's part, where it's like, we can't let Halo die? What does that mean for the brand if we let Halo die? Because there are Master Chief helmet emblems on the inside of every Series X and Series S. They're on the chipsets on the inside of the system, and they're on the boxes when you buy a Series X. So like, they almost can't let it fail.
No.
So like, rebranding and going like, this is Halo Studios. We've got a bunch of new games coming. They won't give us a timeline for anything because at the minute they've just been doing this Unreal 5 tech stuff. I guess. I
think the Nintendo comparison is really apt because it to me, them letting Halo fail, not just die, not just allowing it to go away, but them trying to make Halo a thing again and reach the heights of Halo 3 that we had all those years ago and failing to reach them. That is almost as bad as if Nintendo would be doing that with Mario. If like every new Mario game was a disaster, you know, and they just couldn't make that character and that franchise work. Like, it's, to me, I find it embarrassing often for Xbox that we've gone so long and we've had so many games that like this have claimed to be, you know, a soft reboot, a new slate, a new beginning. We had Halo 4 starting a new trilogy. We had Halo 5 going in a slightly different direction when that didn't resonate as much as they wanted to. We had Infinite going back to basics and setting the groundwork for the next 10 years of Halo. And now we're a few years on and we're doing it all again with a new engine. And that's what I think is a shame. But to the positives, and I swear I have positives on this, I do think, listen, I'm not believing in it, but I do think the desire to make Halo the most cutting edge franchise that Xbox has to offer, I think that's a worthy pursuit because I know graphics are only part of the equation, but, you know, Halo back in the day, Combat Evolved, cutting edge for a first-person shooter on consoles. It kind of established the formula that we would work with for a few years. But not only that, you know, introducing these bigger levels, introducing vehicles into the mix and what have you, kind of a grander story. Then we get Halo 3, beautiful, great, innovative in the online space. And Halo, for me, since then, has never felt as innovative, has never felt as cutting edge. It's always felt like it's chasing trends rather than defining them. Similar to what Call of Duty would become, in my opinion, as that franchise wore on. But, you know, you had Halo 4, you had Halo 5, you had Halo Infinite, trying to be Halo, but also trying to be Call of Duty, trying to be Overwatch, trying to incorporate all these different elements, making a Battle Royale mode that eventually got cancelled. And I want Halo to be Halo. I think it's identifiable enough that it could be leading the pack when it comes to shooters, rather than just being another one. I don't think Halo should ever just be another shooter. I think it needs to try and get to that level of a Call of Duty or whatever.
The thing is, like, the reason Halo was such a massive deal, the original trilogy, that initial rollout, was because it was fundamentally responsible for proving you could even do a first-person shooter on consoles. Like, yes, there was GoldenEye on the N64, but Halo was the one that really made heads turn. Like, it had the whole, like, two-weapon system, like, it had the vehicle stuff, you had this improvisational approach to combat, of, like, figuring your way through a firefight, and no firefight was the same every single time. And that was in itself why Halo mattered. And then Halo 2 added like the multiplayer for the Xbox version. Halo 3 was even bigger. And you had the story component. Everyone cared. Everyone was invested. You can't replicate that. Like, the industry's not in the same place. I don't know what you do in the first-person shooter space that even remotely replicates the level of innovation that Halo brought to the game. Like, that's what is so impossible to hit.
Yes.
And that's why when you were mentioning, like, the idea of them sort of, if they could do a different series, and it's said from the makers of Halo or from the studio that brought you, blah, 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 and they move on to something else, that would probably work better. Like, there would be Halo fans out there that would argue that what they did to Chief in Halo 4 and, like, did the whole child soldier thing, which I know is in the wider lore to a degree, all that stuff might have worked better in a separate franchise. And it's like, that's kind of my thing, is just that ultimately there's a lot of talent at this studio.
Yeah.
And I wonder, would they have rather just been able to go free and do something else? Because now you've doubled down, you've rebranded them.
Yes.
I mean, 343 is obviously, that's the name of Guilty Spark, like, it's a whole thing from Halo. But now you're Halo Studios. So, like, you are really doing this for, another 10 years, another 20 years, or whatever it's going to be. And I just think it's a bit of a folly. Like, I think at the best, you'll end up with a free-to-play shooter that connotes the best parts of Halo in terms of a physics-based arena shooter style game.
Yeah.
With maybe the innovations that Halo Infinite made, where you find parts of your loadout on the map. That in itself is quite innovative.
Yeah.
And then you put it on Game Pass, and it's a reason to get Game Pass. Like, that's what Halo Infinite is right now.
It is. I feel like it needs to be more than that. Like, it doesn't have to reinvent the wheel, I suppose, but it's got to feel big. When Halo returns, it's got to feel like a big deal. And I know you don't love Gears 5 as much as I do, but when they were showing off Gears 5, it looked like the crown jewel in Microsoft's hat. You know what I mean? When they were showing it off at E3, when they were displaying those weather effects, how good it looked, like the actual core gameplay, how they built out bigger sandboxes and bigger player spaces. To me, it felt like the highest production value you could get on Xbox One or Xbox One X. And I don't think Halo has ever felt like that. I always feel like it's been a step behind everything else in the competition. You know, like you said, when they showed off Halo Infinite, it looked all right, but then you had Craig, and Craig became a laughingstock.
And it's next to like Last of Us 2 and everything. Like,
that's what I mean. And it doesn't, you don't have to throw everything, you don't have to throw all the money in the world at it to beat the competitors, but you should, for me, you should look at Gears and you should look at Halo, and Fable to an extent, and instantly get what Xbox can bring to the table, whether that is from a gameplay perspective, whether that is from a graphical standpoint. And like you said, Halo towards the Halo Infinite era just became, it's there if you want it. It's on Game Pass, you can have it. There is a Halo there. And it's going to sound stupid, baby, but it never felt like the thing. It never felt like the version of Halo. And I just want that feeling back, because even, after 3 ended, like, I love Reach. And I thought even 4 had that to an extent of, we're doing something new. But to me, ever since 4, which kind of started this downward trajectory, it's just felt like it always is announced, and it always just delivers kind of a shrug.
I think all they do as well is, like, by steering into art directions that are so reminiscent of Silent Cartographer and Halo 1, all they do is remind you of the golden era, and they remind you of how good it was, and that was 20 years ago. Halo 4 was 2012. It's been a long time, and it's like, you would need to... the way that they announced Halo 5 at the time, where it was like a desert planet, it was a big creature, and then it had like a hooded individual, and then it was Chief, which was hilarious because he has a helmet and a hood on.
Yes.
But whatever. But you need almost something like that and be like, this is the next Halo, and we're going to make it work. And I know it's trepidatious, but it's new ground.
Yeah.
And it needs to have that carry-on identity, not a fundamentally rooted in nostalgia identity, which, like I said, is playing off ultimately one level and one part of that overall trilogy. Like, there's so much more you can pull from, especially in regards to the Covenant and like the religious practices and the home planets and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's just, I mean, I'm kind of like ragging on it. I don't, do what you want, but it's interesting looking at such a long tail franchise that has been so historically mismanaged and given to a studio that then hasn't been able to really do much with it until very recently, and now going like, kind of a soft reboot, kind of going to go back to what you remember, we're going to figure it out. Like, it's just kind of fascinating how much life they insist it has.
And I know what's interesting about this conversation, I think, is that I know this comes from a place of love. I know you're a huge fan of it. I know you want it to be good or not here at all.
I play Halo Infinite all the time.
Exactly.
So, like,
Exactly. I want to ask you then, I'm not saying this one way or another, I don't know. This is just a question I'm putting out into the void, but specifically to you. Is Chief, as a character, is he kind of becoming an albatross around the franchise's
massively
neck? And can this franchise exist or thrive without him? And I just think, obviously, there's still so identifiable, still arguably a lot of mileage in that character, perhaps. But I look at stuff like the success of Reach, or even the success of something like ODST, like that cool spin-off, and you can focus on other characters, even 5 with its sort of split main characters and what have you. Like, I think about the Paramount. It's the Paramount show, right? The TV show that got cancelled. I think about the response to that.
I forgot about that thing.
And obviously, that show, from what I know, had like a load of problems. But people's main problem that I could gauge was the fact that, like, they made Chief not Chief, and that show might have worked if it was just someone else, if it was just some other guy. But the fact that you always have to focus on this character first and foremost, because he is so identifiable, you put him in a trailer, even when you're just starting to build a new engine or build Halo on a new engine, like, is the world not bigger? I don't know. I don't even know.
It's so much bigger. Yeah. Like, Reach and ODST proved that it's bigger. Yeah. Like, the way to do a Halo game now is to not touch the Chief. Like, a lot of people didn't like the direction he went in Halo 4. Like I said, with the child soldier stuff, you flesh him out as a person. There's a great Kroby compilation of the way Bungie used to talk about Chief versus the way 343 talk about Chief.
Right.
And Bungie used to say, even though the character was voiced, that he was pretty much a blank slate, and he didn't talk very much. You can project yourself onto him. Like, doesn't have that much authored into content, like he's a walking tank. And then 343 was like, no, we're going to talk about him. He's tortured. He has this connection to Cortana, and we're going to talk about all that stuff. And that's what makes him like this really powerful individual. And it's like you can go with one of the two, but not within the same franchise and not within the same character. These are different people. But that's the thing. Like, if you want to do future Halo games, I think, like you're saying, it's way more fascinating to do almost the ODST approach, where you hear about Chief's exploits and you Metal Gear Solid 2 it.
Yeah.
Where like you're part of a fire team, or maybe you're part of a new Spartan recruit or something. There's loads of different Spartan programs anyway. Or you can set it in the way off cosmos thousands of years ago in the wider Halo 4-5 canon, where you talk about the original version of humanity that was out there warring with other races and stuff. Do something with them. Like 343 brought all that stuff in, and then didn't set a game in that time period. And they keep going back to Silent Cartographer, Halo, we got you, don't worry about it. And it's like, because you're only reminding us of what the other devs did.
Yes.
And it's like, have some confidence in the stuff you brought to the table and lead with that. And stop having this kind of weird scattered approach to what Halo is. Like, you fundamentally changed what Halo is with Halo 4, and then were unable to kind of go with that. And Halo 5 was responsible for one of the biggest lies in a marketing campaign of all time. Even IGN called it out, saying the Halo campaign lied to you. And so it's unbelievable. But yes, what else can you do with Chief? Like, he was never meant to be a character in the first place. Like, he's the Space Marine. He's the original blank Space Marine.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think it's the bigger thing that you've touched on there. It's not just Chief. It is that trying to return to an identity that hasn't even been around for a long time, and thinking that's all you need to do. Trying to find what made Combat Evolved so good, going back to the more classical look of maybe that first game, or even the third game to an extent, like misunderstanding that 2 made radical changes. I know 2 has its issues, especially from a production standpoint. It's cliffhanger and whatnot, but it was trying to do something new again, like bringing in the Arbiter or whatever, a different color palette. And then 3 kind of did something similar. Like Halo, I just think the box that it's in right now, in the box that it's trying to be put in by Microsoft or by 343, about whoever, is just too limiting, and it will never really produce that wow factor within those confines and within that context. I think I want to be proven wrong.
Same, but I think it fundamentally cannot.